Hello, seniors. Forgot lights. Oh my goodness. And my little, if I can sort it out here, squirrel scarf that Miss Lisa got me. Miss Lisa Davis long ago. Ta-da! Let's read chapter 22. Hope I don't have any hard words. Ooh, Pleasant Meadows. Like sunshine after storm were the peaceful weeks which followed. The invalids improved rapidly. And Mr. March, is he home? He's not home yet. Began to talk of returning early in the new year. Beth was soon able to lie on the study sofa all day, amusing herself with the well-beloved cats. At first, and in time, with doll sewing, which had fallen sadly behindhand, her once active limbs were so stiff and feeble that Joe took her a daily airing about the house in her strong arms. Meg cheerfully blackened and burnt her white hands cooking delicate messes for the dear, while Amy, a loyal slave of the ring, celebrated her return by giving away as many of her treasures as she could prevail on her sisters to accept. As Christmas approached, the usual mysteries began to haunt the house, and Joe frequently convulsed the family by proposing utterly impossible or magnificently absurd ceremonies in honor of this unusually merry Christmas. Laurie was equally impractical and would have bonfires, skyrockets, and triumphal arches if he had his own way. After many skirmishes and snubbings, the ambitious pair were considered effectually quenched, and went about with forlorn faces which were rather belied by explosions of laughter when the two got together. Several days of unusually mild weather fitly ushered in a splendid Christmas day. Hannah felt in her bones that it was going to be an uncommonly plummy day, and she proved herself a true prophetess, for everybody and everything seemed bound to produce a grand success. To begin with, Mr. March wrote that he should soon be with them. Okay. Then Beth felt uncommonly well that morning, and being dressed in her mother's gift, a soft crimson merino wrapper, was borne in triumph to the window to behold the offering of Joe and Laurie. The unquenchables had done their best to be worthy of the name, for like elves, they had worked by night and conjured up a comical surprise. Out in the garden stood a stately snow maiden crowned with holly, bearing a basket of fruit and flowers in one hand, a great roll of new music in the other. A perfect rainbow of an Afghan rounded her chilly shoulders, and a Christmas carol issuing from her lips on a pink paper streamer. It says the Jungfrau, Jungfrau, to Beth. God bless you, dear Queen Bess. May nothing you dismay, but health and peace and happiness be yours this Christmas day. Here's fruit to feed our busy bee, and flowers for her nose. Here's music for her piano, and Afghan for her toes. A portrait of Joanna C. by Raphael No. 2, who labored with great industry to make it fair and true. Except a ribbon red, I beg, for Madame Pure's tail, and ice cream made by lovely Peg, a Mont Blanc in a pail. Their dearest love my makers laid within my breast of snow, accept it, and the Alpine maid, from Laurie and from Joe. How Beth laughed when she saw it, how Laurie ran up and down to bring in the gifts, and what ridiculous speeches Joe made as she presented them. I'm so full of happiness that if Father was only here, I couldn't hold one drop more, said Beth, quite sighing with contentment as Joe carried her off to the study to rest after the excitement and to refresh herself with some of the delicious grapes the Jungfrau, maybe it's Jungfrau, had sent her. So am I, added Joe, slapping the pocket wherein reposed the long-desired Undine and Centrum. I'm sure I am, echoed Amy, poring over the engraved copy of the Madonna and Child which her mother had given her in a pretty frame. Of course I am, cried Meg, smoothing the silvery folds of her first silk dress, for Mr. Lawrence had insisted on giving it. How can I be otherwise, said Mrs. March gratefully, as her eyes went from her husband's letter to Beth's smiling face, and her hand caressed the brooch made of gray and golden, chestnut and dark brown hair which the girls had just fastened on her breast. Now and then in this workaday world, things do happen in the delightful storybook fashion, and what a comfort that is. Half an hour after everyone had said they were so happy they could only hold one drop more, the drop came. Laurie opened the parlor door and popped his head in very quietly. He might just as well have turned a somersault and uttered an Indian war whoop, for his face was so full of suppressed excitement, and his voice so treacherously joyful that everyone jumped up, though he only said in a queer, breathless voice, "Here's another Christmas present for the March family." I bet I know what it is. Do you? Before the words were well out of his mouth, he was whisked away somehow, and in his place appeared a tall man, muffled up to the eyes, leaning on the arm of another tall man who tried to say something and couldn't. Of course, there was a general stampede, and for several minutes everybody seemed to lose their wits, for the strangest things were done, and no one said a word. Mr. March became invisible in the embrace of 4 pairs of loving arms. Jo disgraced herself by nearly fainting away and had to be doctored by Laurie in the china closet. Mr. Brooke kissed Meg entirely by mistake, as he somewhat incoherently explained, and Amy, the dignified, tumbled over a stool, and never stopping to get up, hugged and cried over her father's boots in the most touching manner. Mrs. March was the first to recover herself and held up her hand with a warning, "Hush, remember Beth." But it was too late. The study door flew open. The little red wrapper appeared on the threshold. Joy put strength into the feeble limbs, and Beth ran straight into her father's arms. Never mind what happened just after that, for the full hearts overflowed, washing away the bitterness of the past and leaving only the sweetness of the present. It was not at all romantic, but a hearty laugh set everybody straight again, for Hannah was discovered behind the door sobbing over the fat turkey which she had forgotten to put down when she rushed up from the kitchen. As the laugh subsided, Mrs. March began to thank Mr. Brooke for his faithful care of her husband, at which Mr. Brooke suddenly remembered that Mr. March needed rest, and seizing Laurie, he precipitatedly retired. Then the two invalids were ordered to repose, which they did, by both sitting in one big chair and talking hard. Mr. March told how he had longed to surprise them, and how when the fine weather came, he had been allowed by his doctor to take advantage of it, how devoted Brooke had been, and how he was altogether a most estimable and upright young man. While Mr. March paused a minute just there, and after a glance at Meg, who was violently poking the fire, looking at his wife with an inquiring lift of the eyebrows, I'll leave you to imagine. Also, why Mrs. March gently nodded her head and asked rather abruptly if he wouldn't have something to eat. Joe saw and understood the look, and she stalked grimly away to get wine and beef tea, muttering to herself as she slammed the door, "I hate estimable," that's hard to say, I don't know if I'm saying it right, like an estimate, "young men with brown eyes. There never was such a Christmas dinner as they had that day. The fat turkey was a sight to behold. When Hannah sent him up, stuffed, browned, and decorated, so was the plum pudding, which quite melted in one's mouth. Likewise the jellies, in which Amy reveled like a fly in a honey pot. Everything turned out well, which was a mercy," Hannah said, "for my mind was that flustered, Mum, and it's a miracle I didn't roast the pudding and stuff the turkey with raisins, let alone biling of it in a cloth. Biling of it in a cloth." Mr. Lawrence and his grandson dined with them, also Mr. Brooke, at whom Joe glowered darkly, to Laurie's infinite amusement. 2 easy chairs stood side by side at the head of the table, in which sat Beth and her father, feasting modestly on chicken and a little fruit. They drank healths, told stories, sung songs, reminisced, as the old folks say, and had a thoroughly good time. A sleigh ride had been planned, but the girls would not leave their father, so the guests departed early, and as twilight gathered, the happy family sat together round the fire. Just a year ago, we were groaning over the dismal Christmas we expected to have. "Do you remember?" asked Joe, breaking a short pause which had followed a long conversation about many things. "Rather a pleasant year on the whole," said Meg, smiling at the fire and congratulating herself on having treated Mr. Brooke with dignity. My lights are about out. More batteries. I just changed those. "I think it's been a pretty hard one," observed Amy, watching the light shine on her ring with thoughtful eyes. "I'm glad it's over because we've got you back," whispered Beth, who sat on her father's knee. "Rather a rough road for you to travel, my little pilgrims, especially the latter part of it, but you have got on bravely, and I think the burdens are in a fair way to tumble off very soon," said Mr. March, looking with fatherly satisfaction at the 4 young faces gathered round him. I was just looking at a video earlier, and this wasn't nearly of me earlier in the year, like about June. Let's see. Wait a minute. Looking with fatherly satisfaction at the 4 young faces gathered around him. "How do you know?" "Didn't Mother tell you?" asked Joe. "Not much. Straws show which way the wind blows, and I've made several discoveries today." "Oh, tell us what they are," cried Meg, who sat beside him. "Here is one." And taking up the hand which lay on the arm of his chair, he pointed to the roughened forefinger, a burn on the back, and 2 or 3 little hard spots on the palm. "I remember a time when this hand was white and smooth, and your first care was to keep it so. It was pretty then, but to me it is much prettier now, for in these seeming blemishes I read a little history." Let's see. A burnt offering has been made of vanity. This hardened palm has earned something better than blisters, and I'm sure the sewing done by these pricked fingers will last a long time. So much goodwill went into the stitches. Meg, he's talking to Meg. Meg, my dear, I value the womanly skill which keeps home happy more than white hands or fashionable accomplishments. I'm proud to shake this good, industrious little hand and hope I shall not soon be asked to give it away, like in marriage. If Meg had wanted a reward for hours of patient labor, she received it in the hearty pressure of her father's hand and the approving smile he gave her. What about Jo? Please say something nice, for she has tried so hard and been so very, very good to me, said Beth in her father's ear. He laughed and looked across at the tall girl who sat opposite with an unusually mild expression in her brown face. In spite of the curly crop, I don't see the son, Jo, whom I left a year ago, said Mr. March. I see a young lady who pins her collar straight, laces her boots neatly, and neither whistles, talks slang, nor lies on the rug as she used to do. Her face is rather thin and pale just now with watching and anxiety, but I like to look at it, for it has grown gentler, and her voice is lower. She doesn't bounce, but moves quietly and takes care of a certain little person in a motherly way. Talking about Beth. Which delights me. I rather miss my wild girl, but if I get a strong, helpful, tender-hearted woman in her place, I shall feel quite satisfied. I don't know whether the shearing for hair sobered our black sheep, but I do know that in all Washington I couldn't find anything beautiful enough to be bought with the $5 and $20 which my good girl sent me. By the way, I'm not sure if I told you this. No. My daughter, Lindsay, the eldest, the manager's mom, Lindsay, my little redhead, she teaches at Florida Gulf Coast University, like med students, pre-med students, molecular and cellular biology. She also participates in breast cancer research. She did it at Tulane University in New Orleans, and I think she still works with a group of those folks. But anyway, she's active in breast cancer research. She was quoted recently in an article about Beyonce's father, who has had, either has or had, breast cancer. You know, men can have it too. I had a male cousin who had it. But she said that she's often quoted, back when I don't know how often, sometimes she's interviewed by reporters or whatever, and she said she had no idea who they were talking about. You know, she was just generally speaking about breast cancers in males and whatnot. I'm not sure exactly what she sent me the quote and stuff, but I just thought that was cool. Not cool that Beyonce's father had it, but that my daughter's quote was in there. Yay, Lens. Oh, and the reason I brought her up, we were talking about the shorn Meg shearing off her hair, or cutting it off, not actually shaving it off. But my daughter Lindsay is going to, if she hasn't already, shave her beautiful head of red hair for breast cancer awareness month. I guess October is. So there you go. Go, Linz. Although I hate to see your beautiful red hair go, I'm sure it will grow back, and what a great thing for you to do. I'm so proud of you. Okay, now where was I? Did I just turn the page? Let's see here. Yes. $5 and $20, which my good girl sent to me. And I think that was the money she got from her hair being cut, because I know she gave her mom some to travel on, I believe was what it was. Joe's keen eyes were rather dim for a moment, and her thin face grew rosy in the firelight as she received her father's praise, feeling that she did deserve a portion of it. "Now, Beth," said Amy, longing for her turn, but ready to wait. "There's so little of her, I'm afraid to say much, for fear she will slip away altogether, though she's not so shy as she used to be," began their father, cheerfully, but recollecting how nearly he had lost her, he held her close, saying tenderly, with her cheek against his own, "I've got you safe, my Beth, and I'll keep you so, please God." After a minute's silence, he looked down at Amy, who sat on the cricket. That's something you sit on, I reckon. Let's hope. She didn't sit on the insect. At his feet, and said with a caress of the shining hair, "I observed that Amy took drumsticks at dinner, ran errands for her mother all the afternoon, gave Meg her place tonight, and has waited on everyone with patience and good humor. I also observe that she does not fret much, nor prink at the glass, and has not even mentioned a very pretty ring which she wears, so I conclude that she has learned to think of other people more and of herself less, and has decided to try and mold her character as carefully as she molds her little clay figures. I'm glad of this, for though I should be very proud of a graceful statue made by her, I shall be infinitely prouder of a lovable daughter with a talent for making life beautiful to herself and others." "What are you thinking of, Beth?" asked Joe, when Amy had thanked her father and told about her ring. "I read in Pilgrim's Progress today how, after many troubles, Christian and Hopeful came to a pleasant green meadow where lilies bloomed all the year round, and there they rested happily, as we do now, before they went on to their journey's end," answered Beth, adding, as she slipped out of her father's arms and went slowly to the instrument, the piano. "It's singing time now, and I want to be in my old place. I'll try to sing the song of the shepherd boy, which the pilgrims heard. I made the music for Father because he likes the verses." So, sitting at the dear little piano, Beth softly touched the keys, and in the sweet voice they had never thought to hear again, sung to her own accompaniment the quaint hymn, which was a singularly fitting song for her. Not sure how the tune goes. "He that is down need fear no fall. He that is low no pride. He that is humble ever shall have God to be his guide. I am content with what I have, little be it or much. And Lord, contentment shall still I crave, because thou savest such. Fullness to them a burden is that go on pilgrimage. Here little and hereafter bliss is best from age to age." And that's the end of chapter 22. So I will stop there. And chapter 23 is called Aunt March Settles the Question. Wonder what the question is. Wonder if it's about... Oh. And it looks like it's a fairly longish chapter. But then we're on, finally, part 2. Let's see how many parts this fat book has. It has. Yeah, Aunt March Settles the Question is the last chapter before we get to part 2. And that's all. We got a part 1 and a part 2. So let's just see here. We had 23 chapters there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. There's 24. Just one more chapter in part 2 than in part 1. And there's also a section called Notes. Let me look at that just real quick. Oh my goodness. Michelle Sleeper. Guess what in the notes? There's a lot of stuff in the notes. Well, I should have looked at this first. I didn't even realize. That's what you get for not paying your table of contents, which is at the beginning of a book. There's notes and an author file. So there's something about Louisa May Alcott. And like, there's questions like, what was she like? When was she born? When did she die? Where she lived? Did she grow up? What did she do apart from writing books? What did people think of this book when it was first published in the 1860s? Where did Louisa May Alcott get the idea for this book, Little Women? Good stuff. What other books did she write? Also, it says in the notes section, Little Women hits Hollywood, and it tells about the movie, the director George Cukor. If you've seen the version with Katharine Hepburn as playing Jo, Christopher Columbus. I remember her saying that. Huge star of the silver screen, she won 4 Oscars during her acting career. Hepburn herself was a tomboy and a keen sports player, and apparently did not own a dress or a skirt off screen. Cukor was nominated for an Oscar for Best Director for this. The movie for this, I reckon. He didn't win, but his writers took away an Oscar for the category of Best... Oh, the writers, okay. Took an Oscar for the category of Best Film Adaptation from a Book. At the Venice Film Festival in 1934, Katharine Hepburn won the gold medal for Best Actress for her role as Jo March. Little Women was also nominated for Best Foreign Film, but the prize was taken by Man of Erin. In 1933, the film's producers won America's oldest film award, the Photoplay Medal of Honor. It says the straightforward retelling of Alcott's classic is believed by many film buffs to be the definitive film version of Little Women. So that's interesting about the movie. Then there's been several other movies. There was one in 1949, and it tells the director here was Mervyn LeRoy, and the director in 1994 was Gillian Armstrong, and it tells stuff under each one. We'll read that later. Also under the notes is Who's Who in Little Women, so it gives a character description of Joe, of Meg, of Beth, of Amy, of Marmee, who's the mom, probably of Hannah, of Dad. Let's see. Can't get the page to turn. Come on. This seems like a newish book. Yep, Mr. March, Hannah, Aunt March, Laurie, Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Brooke, Professor Bear, who we haven't met yet in this book, the Hummels, the Moffats, the Vaughns, and then it is some notes to think about. So, like if you were reading this maybe for a book club, like it's got who is your favorite March sister and why? So just some things to think about. How does Jo March compare to some modern day literary heroines such as Hermione Granger from Harry Potter? And which of your favorite heroes or heroines do you think she would be friends with? Those would be some good writing exercises. If you were casting a film of Little Women, which actresses would you choose for the roles of the March sisters and why? Those are some neat stuff. By alternating between stories about each of the March sisters, Alcott gives us 4 distinct heroines. Think about which of the sisters you can relate to the most and write a chapter from her viewpoint. And it says, here are some quotes from Little Women. Can you work out who said them? That sounds British. Can you work out who said them? And I'm not going to read all these, and it's got the answers to them too. Upside down on the next thing, and it says some things to do. The March girls love to put on plays. Select your favorite scene from the novel and adapt it into a play script. And choose your cast and act it out with your friends. And it also talks about father being in the war, and it tells about the Civil War, and it says imagine you're a newspaper reporter at the time and write an article about the famous Battle of Gettysburg. It gives you some more info before that. And here we go, Michelle, with a glossary. Like Apollyon, that I'm probably slaying, Apollyon, a monster from Pilgrim's Progress, which they mention several times. That's a book. In this case, referring to Jo's temper being the destroyer of her good character. Arsenicum, a homeopathic medicine. Atalanta, a female athlete in Greek myth known for taking part in male activities. Betokening, displaying. Blowsy, disheveled in appearance. Boaz, well, I know who that is. Husband of Ruth in the Bible, a charitable man. A charitable man. Oh. China aster, a plant known for its variety of colorful flowers, sometimes described as mumsy. In this context, likened for its primness. Dyspeptic is ill-humored. ENNUI is boredom. And some of these Michelle told me about. Ferrule or ferrule, a flat ruler used for striking the hand as a form of corporal punishment. Go to the deuce is a euphemism for go to, you know where? It actually says the word, and they don't use ADs. Moil, M-O-I-L, like toil, to work hard. Mulatter is like mulatto, a person with one white parent, one black parent. Niminy Piminy Chits affected girls who put on airs and graces. Panacea Remedy. Poplins, ribbed fabric, usually cotton. Marches referred to their poplin dresses simply as poplins. A primer is an elementary textbook used for teaching children to read. Do you remember? I remember being in first grade, maybe y'all were in kindergarten they started, but we would have reading circles. You know, if you read really well, you might be in the Red Robin's group or something. If you read really badly, you might be in the Buzzards. But we had, you know, different reading circles, and you would move up. Instead of having one like big, thick reading book, we had the little primers. And we'd go, you know, it was the Tom, Dick, and Harry, Sally, Puff, all those. Golly, I'm going on and on. But you'd finish one book, and then you'd get to the next book, and that was always a cool thing. Are you in the whatever book yet? I had forgotten about that. Rag money, the nickname given to paper money. People were used to gold or silver coins, and so at first doubted the value of paper money and hence mockingly gave it that name, rag money. It was just paper money, like a dollar bill. Prink is to rearrange oneself, to primp. Rattle-pated, foolish, lacking sense, rigged, dress up one's clothes. Rubbers, you know, as a, you know, like a rain boot. Sack, I guess, S-A-C-Q-U-E, a loose hip length jacket. Some of these maybe we've gotten to and some not. And there's others. Worsted is in here as a hard textured fabric. Anyway, isn't that cool? All in the back of the book here. And this book really does look new. We might even been the first folks to have checked it out. I used to like the way, I know I'm going on and on and on, but I used to love the way you used to check out books a long time ago. I remember we had a little library here in Faith, and I loved that place. I still remember how it smelled, how it looked. It used to have a little pot-bellied stove in there, too. It was tiny, tiny, tiny. But I loved it, and I knew the librarian lady. She was well known in the community. But, you know, you used to have in the back of the book, there was a little pocket, like right here. And inside the pocket was the library card, and you took it out and you signed it. And then the librarian would date it, and there was also another little piece of paper, the date of when you were supposed to bring it back by. And I used to love to look at the library card and see who had read it before me. And when you live in a little teeny town like Faith, North Carolina, where I live, most of the time you knew the people who read it before you. So you're like, oh, this must be a good book because so-and-so read it. Anyway, just GrannyDee blabbing and remembering things. Love to you all. I'm so happy that I'm feeling better, and now the mystery is solved on what's wrong with GrannyDee. I'm not happy about it, about the hypothyroidism. I don't even know what I'm in for. I'm not looking it up on the internet because I'm a hypochondriac and I'll scare myself to death. But I am happy that I know what it is. We can put a name to it. And even more than that, we can get medicine for it. And not that I like to be on all kinds of medicine, but heck, if it'll fix something. And I know I'm like all animated and hyper now after I've been so sluggish. But I am feeling better today. Now, in a minute, I could crash. And maybe it's just because I'm happy I know what's going on with my body. Or maybe I got more sleep last night than I normally do. Who the heck knows? Anyway, I need to get off of here. Go put my feet up. Do some knitting. And some crocheting. Mwah. Love you all. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. And I'll be back tomorrow, Saturday at 3. And Sunday too. So set your alarms. I think I already said be sweet. Don't be ugly. I think I did. Love you all. Bye-bye.